the foundation for me around that culture and around that trust, once that is gone, you're effectively standing on quicksand.
And unless you've got the right culture, there is no way you are going to execute that.
Welcome to this podcast. Today we're going to be talking about how you can ignite your culture by really cultivating your uniqueness. Kelly, I know this is one that's really important to you. Why in particular did you want to talk about this today?
So last podcast we talked about how an individual or an exec team can unlock their potential. I think the real magic happens when you can unlock the whole organisation's potential. So today I really, having experienced that, having done that in a number of places, when you can get a tsunami of energy, it really makes a difference to your organisation's speed.
So you and I we've been lucky enough to work with many organisations all over the world, and we've previously talked about what our experience of different cultures, how it's impacted us, and how culture can be such a differentiator between how a business grows and how it evolves. What is it in particular that you think matters most about differentiation of culture within an organisation?
Well, I think if I start at the top around what is culture. So Peter Drucker famously said many, many years ago, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I'm not sure I really understood that for the first part of my leadership career. But as I've taken on more and more senior responsibility, I've realised you can have the most phenomenal strategy, and unless you've got the right culture, there is no way you are going to execute that. And so for me, I think I've got really clear that, strategy creates clarity, culture creates energy. And with both together, there's no stopping you. And why that matters is people can copy your products. They can copy your strategy. In fact, I've worked for an organisation previously where our strategy was to be the fastest follower. But what they cannot copy is your culture. And when you really think about consumers of today, consumers don't just want to buy products from you. They want to buy into you. And that's why culture is just so important.
And those types of culture differentiators can almost at times be invisible. They're such small things that make such a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can see it and you can feel it in the smallest of interactions. So maybe how your team greets a customer on the phone, how far they're willing to go to resolve a complaint even, how they speak about your customers or each other. All of those little moments feed into your culture. And I think you can either be intentional about your culture and make sure that those behaviours, the way people make decisions, are all in service of the greater purpose. Or if you don't do it intentionally, you're going to have a culture anyway. It just might not be the one that you really want and need.
And I guess culture isn't a nice to have. Effectively, it's a commercial asset.
Absolutely. If you don't have the right culture, it can cause drag, friction, confusion. It can erode, maybe at first quite slowly, but the speed at which it can erode is phenomenal. If you think about a high performing team that then has one new team member who perhaps complains about other team members, very, very quickly that high performing team can start to self-combust. And so you really have to nip behaviours in the bud. You really have to celebrate the ones that you want to see more of, and definitely not allow those that you don't.
So taking it, I suppose, from in-house to our customers, why is it so important that we develop and grow an authentic identity with our customers and give them something that they can buy into? Why is that so important?
Because authenticity matters. So clients want brands that they can buy into, that they believe in, that are reliable and trustworthy. And so if you stand for something, your customers will stand with you. I think it goes beyond the customer, actually. it's about, your culture is about the type of teammates that you have inside your organization that then are going to be part of that customer experience. So if you take Start Inspiring, our values are to inspire, challenge, and grow. And I am a huge advocate. Brené Brown talks about being clear is kind. I'm a huge advocate in developmental feedback. And so we talk about that on our onboarding and our recruitment of individuals, because if you are an individual that is not comfortable with kind, constructive feedback culture, you won't enjoy working at Start Inspiring. And that's okay. Like, not everybody's going to fit that one place. And when I mean fit, I mean feel comfortable in. I don't think culture is about everybody being the same, but it's about an experience you're going to have when you're in that organisation. So if you come and work here, we expect you to work really hard on behalf of our organisation. We expect you to be a continuous learner so that you can bring inspiring content. We can challenge the status quo, and we can help grow ourselves and grow our clients. If you don't want to be that person, that's okay. But you won't want to be part of our organisation. It just won't feel comfortable for you.
When your culture and your brand identity align, customers don't just buy from you, they're effectively buying into you, right? So for organizations that you're working with, where have you seen this have the biggest impact? I guess in a good way or in a bad way?
So we work in organisations from anything from 50 to 500 and larger at times. I think we've seen the biggest impact when organisations are scaling at speed and they perhaps haven't spent as much time as they could really thinking about their values and their culture, so that when they attract huge numbers of people in the organisation, they make sure that that isn't diluted as they grow. That's when you see them lose their brand, their way, their authenticity. And actually the CEO or founder feels that things are kind of slipping through their fingers a little bit. Whereas conversely, when organisations get really clear really early, so take Patagonia, they're really clear about their purpose. They're really clear about what they stand for. And they attract both talented individuals to work there and customers that really care. And so they've almost got an internal and external tribe are all supporting that brand. They really want it to be successful.
So what you're saying is Start Inspiring are able to almost create unity and clarity when they're looking at key components for growth.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Your culture is part of your DNA, and making that unique to you is one of your biggest commercial differentiators.
And clarity really then is enabling them to know actually what's expected, not just in their own leadership behaviours, but actually the ripple effect it has across their organisation. So what you're saying is a strong culture, a DNA protects the business and effectively it's propelling growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've all seen recent examples in the press. Take the BBC, take the Metropolitan Police, huge organisations who haven't intentionally, McDonald's is another one, where their cultures have allowed for poor behaviours, poor practices, and has eroded public confidence. It's one of the saddest things to witness, because it almost creeps up on you if you are not really intentional. If you let the little stuff go, you can see organisations lose their brilliant cultures almost insidiously. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to.
Is there an example where you've seen this happen?
So actually, let's take the sector we talked about earlier, the financial sector, and where they have had to work really hard to regain customer confidence and trust. We work with a wonderful financial organisation who have a leader at the top that knows how imperative culture is. And we've been working with them for a couple of years now, and I can say it's an absolute pleasure. So not just, when we talk about make work for everyone, it works for the consultants and outsourced support as well, because they are a delight to work for. And a result of that is we would do everything we could to support them because we enjoy and have fun with them at the same time. So their founder, they're on a high growth scale up. They're privately equity backed, and they have been doing a number of acquisitions. There are many to come. And every time they look at an opportunity, they do their due diligence on culture first. And I know we say that that's really important to other clients, but that's their first non-negotiable. And they are so clear about who they are and the type of talent that they want to attract and the type of customers that they want to service, that they have walked away from what on paper looks like really lucrative opportunities for them, because they can see that that potential incoming business is not culturally aligned, and they would rather walk away from that than go for it. And we know, actually, if you don't do cultural due diligence in your acquisition, many of those acquisitions don't actually work, because it's like putting two polar opposite families together in the same house and then expecting them all to get on together. And it's an absolute delight. Like, every individual that works in that organisation, they've got such brilliant length of service. People can be their beautiful selves and contribute. And yeah, it's a pleasure to work with and to experience.
Effectively, culture isn't static.
It's not static.
The foundation for me around that culture and around that trust, once that is gone, you're effectively standing on quicksand. Because how can people believe in you when you're not creating an environment where you show that you believe in them? And, you know, those small things then start to add up. And then obviously the end user or external audiences then start to be impacted as well. It takes so long to rebuild that again. And it is something that even part of that journey going back to rebuild is demotivating within itself. And if you've got leaders talking about, you know, thinking what got them here will get them there, they go back to doing what they've always done. And unfortunately, it's then redundant. You know, the culture has moved on and they're trying to almost play catch up with that. Yes. And often some of the examples we've seen, you know, when you go back into that organisation, they almost don't know where to start because they can't identify when it all started going wrong.
Just look at the financial sector. Years and years and years of trying to rebuild trust, respect, loyalty. So yeah, I would say invest in it early. As you scale, make sure you're really clear about your values, your purpose, how you want your customer experience, how you want your team experience to feel. And then make sure that you reward. So your whole systems are set up to reward that behaviour and to nip in the bud anything that you see that isn't aligned.
Something else I've noticed, Kelly, is when we've certainly talked about this, when we've gone into organisations and they are trying their best to do this. So they've acknowledged that there's a challenge there. They've acknowledged that there's a problem there, and they come to us to help them start to fix that. Sometimes what I can see is that people try and run before they can walk. And a client that we're working with at the moment I can think of is, you know, they're thinking about diversification. It's part of their growth strategy. It's part of what their business needs to continue to be successful. But when the culture is still being fixed in that mode, and then an organisation starts talking about diversification, you can then start to predict some of the pockets of behaviours are going to fail before they've even failed. Those, I think, are some of the toughest conversations to have with people, because they're not yet seeing what you're anticipating. And so it's your own anticipated belief that which is their future blind spot on trying to do something now and have sound foundations on a culture which is built on trust and built on communities of their organisation that are standing shoulder to shoulder, as opposed to one person dictating what good looks like.
I think that's where our experience is really important for an organisation. So we can help them see the entire front box of the jigsaw that's coming their way. And then we can show them which parts of the jigsaw to put in which order, so that they will actually do it in the most effective way. And I think it's a really lovely way of thinking about it. Culture is not one single thing. It's lots and lots of pieces that fit together to give you that overall picture, if you like, or overall authentic, healthy, sustainable culture. But we know what the picture looks like. We can give them the top of the puzzle box and then each individual piece as they need it. But let's be clear, changing a culture is not an overnight thing. It's not something for the faint-hearted. It's for people that really want to do something significant and with intentionality.
I guess what you're saying is culture is far easier to protect than it is to actually repair.
It's like having a garden. It's like constantly putting the right seeds in, watering it, looking after it, and it will bloom and be beautiful. And if you plant the right bulbs at the right time, it will be beautiful all year round. If you don't, it's almost like watching one of those experiments in a petri dish where you've got some tiny little bit in the corner of your organisation that isn't perhaps living and breathing your culture. But before you know it, that thing has spread and is really impacting the whole organisation. Culture is far easier to protect than it is to repair.
So for any organisations out there that are possibly listening to this today and thinking, that's resonating with me, I can identify with some of the things that you've been saying, how can Start Inspiring help them? What are some of the different areas that Start Inspiring would potentially go in and support them with?
I mean, I think the first thing I would say is just pick up the phone to one of us, have a chat, try and work out what it is you're hearing, seeing or experiencing. We can help you get to the root cause very quickly. I think that's our superpower actually, is let's get rid of the noise, let's get rid of the complexity, let's understand what's actually going on or not going on for you. And then actually through that process, we will give you what you need when you need it. So like I've said already, which parts of that jigsaw puzzle do you need? And we can help you with it. That could be executive coaching, that could be management and leadership development, that could be starting right at the start again and saying, actually, what got us here won't get us there. And so let's have a relook at the values. Let's understand what we want to be famous for. Let's build that into our brand. Let's build that into our culture. Let's articulate that in behaviours, because I'm a huge believer in if you can see it, you can be it. But if you articulate what you do want to see, you can also articulate what you don't expect or won't allow to see in your organisation. And with that clarity comes confidence for your leaders to lead, for your team to know exactly what's expected of them, to know if actually you're the organisation that they want to continue working with. And with that, each little piece leads to this really lovely overall effect.
And also, I guess what you're saying is Start Inspiring, help people to invest in the things that actually matter.
Yes, exactly that. Really focusing on the things that are going to enable your people and your business to thrive.
For any organisations out there, and going back to what we like to do at the end of each podcast, what is your one thing? If you're listening to this today, some of these areas are things you can identify with what we're saying. What's one thing, what's one piece of advice that you would give to an organisation?
I would say get really clear about what you want to be famous for. And once you've articulated that, just go and observe your organisation. Be an anthropologist. What do you see actually happening? What are the rituals and habits at play? And are they supportive of what you want to see, or are they undermining what you want to be? Once you've understood that, you'll know, do I need to do something here? And if they are not aligned to what you want to be famous for, I beg you now to get in there quickly and do something about it.
Yeah, what you're saying is you want these things to be observable behaviours of what people are doing, as opposed to these lovely shiny pictures on the wall that have quotes and values, but actually not being embedded or lived by people in that organisation. They're just words. They're not actually actions.
Absolutely. And when we go into an organisation, and one of the things we're often told is we have values, but they're just posters on the wall. That's a real indicator. So yeah, and once you've understood that, make sure all of your systems, and when we talk about the one thing, all of your systems and processes support your culture. An example might be if one of your values is one team and you're observing that actually there is silo behavior in your organization or there's any form of blame, then focus on that as your one thing to say, right, how do I create an organization that lives and breathes one team behavior? Intentionally create projects where you get people to work alongside each other on something. Create a reward system that means when people have supported across your supply chain, that that's actually celebrated and rewarded. And just one step at a time. Don't try and fix everything.
What you're saying as well is, culture becomes real when it becomes something that's tangible and practical.
We sometimes talk about culture in a real ethereal way, and it isn't. It really is distilled into what are your people doing? What can you see and hear and experience? That's your culture.
One of the best analogies I think I've heard around thinking about what really does drive and work to build a powerful culture is actually ensuring that there's congruency.
Yes.
Words powerful, but how does someone look when they say it? Are they believable? Are they trustworthy? Do they look like they even care or want to be there? One of the biggest observations I take away from an organisation when I meet them for the first time is about what does that tone from the top look like?
Yes.
And whatever they want to say or whatever their perception is of what they're seeing, the best people to ask in an organisation is the people reporting into them.
Yeah.
From their perspective, whether it's right or it's wrong, that's the true measure of what your culture looks and sounds like when you ask the people who are on the receiving end of how it feels to be in this organisation.
Absolutely. And there are a number of events that we have run for senior leaders, then the more middle leaders, and then the rest of the organisation. And of course, the further away people get from the source, the less likely there is alignment, actually. And so how do you really work through each level so that those that actually are most likely to be at the coalface with your customers are role modelling what you'd want to see? Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned earlier about picking up the phone, visit our website, listen to one of our podcasts, our previous one, read our newsletters. The power for us is about building a community of people that we can support and we can stand by their side and enable them to be the best versions of themselves. And if we can do that, it goes back to what you said in our earlier podcast series. You want to make a difference and you want to do some great stuff.
Yeah, let's make work for everyone.
Thank you so much for listening today. More importantly, going forwards, if there's any topics that you think would be really valuable and useful for us to cover in our future podcasts, please do get in touch with us today at Start Inspiring. We welcome opinion and we welcome your input.